We experimented a few years ago at Bethlehem to confirm that what I saw on YouTube and TikTok was indeed accurate. It was the egg experiment. Just in case you did not see this, we took an egg and began to stack books on top of it. I mean, we kept stacking this until it was actually hard to keep all the books stacked. This is possible because the egg's shape is structurally impressive and can bear a lot of weight before it breaks. So these kinds of experiments are great for education. Many kids have seen this done in their middle school science classrooms. And when you do this for the first time, most people are amazed, or if not amazed, or at least surprised about just how much you can stack on an egg, because most think eggs are fragile. They crack open easily when hit on their sides. And the first time I saw this done, I thought the same thing. But that's no longer what I find interesting about this demonstration. For me, what is interesting about the egg stacking experiment is what you don't necessarily see. When you watch this experiment, it looks like there is an instant moment of failure. The egg structure is fine until it's not. The egg holds the weight until it reaches that maximum limit, at which point it is instantly crushed. That's what it looks like. But that is not really true. The reality is that as the stress increases, micro cracks form, becoming more extensive and growing in size as more pressure is applied. Eventually, the shape of the shell begins to shift ever so slightly. The average person does not see any of this, but it's there. And if you know what you're looking for and have instruments to measure these forces, you can start to see the signs of structural failure before the egg is crushed. I pride myself on how much I can handle in life. I wear it like a badge of honor. I can do a lot. I can carry a lot. I can keep more balls in the air than I have hands. To do this, I color coordinated my calendar and became a master of efficiency. I know how long work projects take and the exact minute I must leave home to pick up and drop off so people are on time. Now that our oldest can drive, I can fill the time I used to drive her with other things. So I say, yes, I can do that. I add it to the calendar and ensure it is coded to the correct color. My life does not differ from anyone else in my age and socioeconomic demographic. It is just how life goes at this stage. And I would never say that it's bad or even hard. I may join everyone else that I know and say, I'm busy, but, well, that's not unusual. My life is typical, and I'm convinced that anyone looking at me would say something similar. It's typical. My life, it looks like an egg with many books stacked on it, and so does yours. You and I, boy, we carry a lot, which is impressive and even surprising sometimes. And guess what? We're still standing. But what about the micro cracks? The small, barely perceptible stress cracks that begin to form. These are the early warning signs that something is not right and that the weight is starting to have a negative impact. I used to think that the key to life was to avoid getting crushed because that is what I was taught to believe. If I could still function, then I was okay. If I was not crushed, if I was still standing, well, then I was just fine. Just learn to deal with life, Chad. So you get less sleep than you should. That's fine. Just add a couple more Mountain Dews to your caffeine intake. So you miss more family events than you would like. Well, who doesn't? Just check in with your kids when you have the time. So you're more anxious than you used to be. Well, it's a good thing that there's a pill for that. You're still standing. You're moving forward. You are still a functional human being. I find it interesting that as long as people are not crushed, if they still can function relatively well, then they must be okay. Nothing's wrong or needs to change, as the cracks forming in our lives from the weight that we carry are not noticeable, or even worse, are normalized. Our theme this year at Bethlehem is all about flourishing. The heaviness of life, stress, schedules, work, politics, change, life events, aging, boy, all of these impact our lives. And I'm sorry, but flourishing in life is not simply avoiding being crushed. Many people are functioning just fine, but they're not flourishing. I would even say that most people have learned not to see the cracks that are forming from the weight of what they carry in life. Only when it's too late do people pay attention. To be a person of faith, though, and to live out a deep spirituality means paying attention to human flourishing, which means paying attention to the small cracks, because God's dream for the world is that we would not just endure, not just exist, not just function. It is not simply enough to avoid being crushed. We want to be able to flourish, living deeply connected to God, living deeply connected to others. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" And Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and what you see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those with a skin disease are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." In the gospel reading today, John is curious about Jesus and sends some people to get answers from him. "Jesus, what can you show us to confirm that what you are teaching and doing is from God? That is part of God's kingdom, God's restorative action in this world. Are you the one who will show us what this looks like? Are you the Messiah, or should we expect somebody else?" And Jesus answers, "Tell your teacher what you see and hear. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those with a skin disease are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them." Those whose lives are beginning to crack under the heavy burdens of life will find rest, for my ways are life-giving and healing, and do not add more weight to your life, Jesus says. We have now reached the section of the message where so many churches and faith leaders will say to you something like, "Now, all you need to do to flourish, to address the cracks in your life, to make yourself whole, is have faith, and Jesus will remove the heaviness that is weighing on your life. Don't doubt, just believe." But I can't tell you that, because I don't know what people mean when they say those words. I've had spirituality in my life and have been a part of a faith tradition for as long as I can remember, and I still feel the heaviness of life, the anxiety over the future, and the grief over loss. I am not crushed by life, but neither am I free from this heaviness. I'm not light. I still have cracks from the weight of life. Now, some people, hearing me say that, would say that I'm experiencing this because I don't have faith, enough faith, or I guess the right kind of faith. While others would say that this is why having religious belief is pointless, and that God is not real. But here's what I want to tell you today. The way of Jesus that is light, that brings rest and healing and removes some of the heaviness of life, is the way of self-sacrificial love and service. The essence of God that Jesus teaches and lives creates a kind of community that supports one another, seeks to aid the suffering, cares for the vulnerable, and helps carry the weight that we all experience. Flourishing in life is a community-based activity. It is not something that we just manifest all on our own. It is something that cannot be simply accomplished alone. Flourishing is not reserved for the rich or certain demographics. To flourish is to have caring relationships, meaningful work, giving and receiving generosity, living a value-centered life that makes a positive impact on the community and in people's lives. Flourishing is fostering hope for one's children and aging parents, being healthy, living a life that matters. It's what we are called to be and do, and it's what it means to be a church. And Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This year, this program year, our ministry focuses on flourishing. It's what we all need. It is the good news that we hear in the gospel today, and it's what we do when we live in community together. This is the good news that we hear today. Thanks be to God for that. Amen. A couple of reflection questions to help you go deeper into the story of our faith and apply it more directly to your life. I encourage you to talk about them with a partner, journal about them, pray about them, however you want to use them to your benefit. I hope that you do. But here's question number one. What is the weight you feel in your life right now? Where are the cracks in your life coming from? And question number two, are you able to see the struggles of others? How can you be more perceptive to the heaviness in people's lives?